Welcome to the Sargassum Champions Course. You are currently tuning into one of the videos produced for this course. Funding for the course comes from the Resilience, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESEMBID, financed under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESEMBID is being implemented by Expertise France, with the primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean overseas countries and territories. Let's get ready to learn together.
So in Aruba, as you can see, she put yes, no, or maybe. There isn't much loss of tourism. There's maybe some loss of fishing. Both loss of culture, health impacts, building evacuations, electronics corroding, reduced property values, and marine transport, they're all not affected. People see that there's maybe a threat for wildlife, or somebody definitely sees this. The water and power intakes are seems to be affected. Some people say there's poor land filling, or maybe there's poor land filling. Some people see that there is loss of sand. A lot of people are kind of in between. Some people say yes or no, and a lot of people don't know. If there's high startup costs, so if you want to do something with it. Everybody said yes to lack of information, and local media is disinterested. So it seems like people in Aruba don't learn a lot about sargassum, but they probably want to learn, because otherwise they wouldn't give those feedbacks. And they're also unhappy with how the influx is predicted. So 2 people say it's poor, and 3 people see it maybe is poor, and only 1 person says there's no problem with the influx prediction. So this is quite interesting. And from what I've gathered, Aruba isn't as impacted by sargassum. So you can see here, Aruba does live off the tourist industry, and the popular tourist beaches are being taken care of, and you cannot find much sargassum. I'm not sure if they are taken care of by the government or by the hotels themselves, but I think they're also lucky, because there isn't as much sargassum washing up on the shores. So the ABC Islands definitely get sargassum less frequently, less time in the year, and it can become quite strong when it gets there. But I think even when they get it, Bonaire and Curaçao are more impacted than Aruba. However, Aruba has held the International Sargassum Conference, so they definitely are doing stuff against it, or in the international limelight, even if maybe not locally. And here is the sargassum impact on Aruba. It looks like a lot of seagrass is actually in there as well. So here's the washed up seaweed in a place that is not touristy. So probably the seaweed isn't moved away, and there's a little bit of sargassum in there. If they plan events here, the small amount that is here will be cleaned up. So most people she interviewed don't know much about sargassum, because also the impact is low. And when the refinery was still working, the sargassum would delay the work of the refinery. And that was a problem. So it seems like it impacted the industry more back in the days, and not so much the tourism, which is quite interesting. And now we got some Maarten.
Yeah, but I was going to tell you if there is someone else who wants to say something about Aruba. We have Jerome.
That's true.
Aruba. So, do you want to add something, Jerome?
I actually don't have a voice right now, because I'm sick. I would like to add something, but I can't.
Okay.
We can also add it in the chat.
Yes.
Yes, I write it down.
Who wants to add something?
Yeah,
I heard.
this is Manfred. I traveling to Aruba a lot. I'm also not feeling quite well, but so I'll keep it short. On Aruba, if Sargassum is taken to the landfill, it probably will be baled because they bale a lot of their garbage. So that might be positive. And if we look at the media attention, I think always for the ABC Islands, you need to make a difference between Papiamento and Dutch. So in the presentation we have from Curaçao, we have 3 pages or 3 times 2 pages on Sargassum. And that explains in general. So people in Aruba have the same newspaper, and I'm not sure whether that pages are printed there as well. But there's a little bit of attention only from the Papiamento language people. But we will show also that there is from Unique Curaçao a nice video in Papiamento explaining everything about what Sargassum is. So I agree with the statement that the ABC Islands do not have that much impact like we've seen in the other islands, and that was my addition to this.
Thank you.
All right, then we go to St. Maarten, and we'll come back to what Jerome wrote once she's done writing in the chat.
Hi, evening. Can you hear me good?
Yes, Claire,
Yes.
I can hear you good.
Perfect. Leslie was on her way trying to join, but she got held up at customs for some of her work, so I think she's still stuck in traffic. So I'll present for both of us. We went the digital route. So we drafted a office forms document, and we shared it on both our NGO platforms and shared it amongst colleagues and friends, especially ones that we know live along the coastline. And then also the ones who wanted to submit a video, I see this one's a video, they sent to Leslie videos and pictures. I don't know if the video is going to work. Yes.
Let's try. Yes.
This looks like it's at Point Blanche. So that's also the area that I did for my for homework for last week. And indeed, most of the people who responded were from Point Blanche. We had about 35 responses. And you'll see that it's a differentiation between different neighborhoods. You'll see I see also from the French side, and the rest is all different areas. Some are more heavily affected, some are more coastal, but the one who has the main one in the middle is the one who also is very heavily affected and is a residential area. Yeah.
Go here. Sorry.
All right, so we asked a few questions and asked them to see which was more impactful to them and what they thought Sargassum had as more of a negative impact. So that's orange. So most of them thought the heaviest impact was threats to local wildlife, as well as toxic gases impacting health. And other was also loss of sand on beaches. Those are the most prominent answers provided by most. The loss of culture and corrosion of electronic devices seemed less, which is interesting, mentioning the corrosion, but I guess we're also used to anyone who lives along the coast of corrosion happening either way. So I think it's hard to differentiate if it's exacerbated by Sargassum or not. But it is indeed, it does give a bit of an indication of what people are worried about. Yeah, poor landfill practices. Well, that's also a common thing, so it's not really a Sargassum related thing either. Anything else that comes out of this one? Temporary closures or evacuation. I mean, we don't have it that often. This year it hasn't been that bad. Also, it's usually the French side that gets hit the hardest. So only a few areas on the Dutch side really get hit, and then they get hit quite regularly. And next one. If persons feel if the following statements are true, the most, let me see, yeah, most of the persons answered that local media, government, and conservation agencies do not see sargassum management as a priority. I think if you would differentiate these between conservation agencies and government, that you would probably see a little bit of different answer. And that there's a lack of information on sargassum uses is also mentioned. I guess also because initially there was a lot of ideas about how sargassum could potentially be used, and that lately a lot of more information has been coming out that actually there's a lot of negative things, so you can't just compost it, for example. So I guess more information is coming out, but I don't think it's really being channeled to the public in general. But indeed that there's a high startup cost for doing anything with it, really. That is also quite pertinent. Next. And then we also wanted to ask if people had any ideas about any kind of positive benefits that come about by sargassum, as most of the impacts is usually focused on the negative aspects. We also left it open to see if anyone had anything else to say about things that we might have mentioned. Some didn't have an idea or didn't think there was any benefit. And one was a little bit of a combination of everything. But indeed, some of the persons who did answer, but I guess they're also because some of them are within our network, did say that they do have a positive impact as ecosystem services. And indeed, some did mention about fertilizer or compost, so you can tell that not all the information has trickled down to everyone. But I thought it was interesting that there are some people who are aware of storing of carbon and that it can have an effect on climate change, and that there are other ways of making use of it for more sustainable purposes. Next. And this is our last one. This is more an open-ended question, so I had to summarize and categorize it on ways people think would be best to tackle sargassum locally. Interestingly enough, it was kind of evenly split between people thinking that it would be best to just clean up when it's on the beach, as with preventing it from reaching the beach. Some people are like, you don't really have to do anything with it. That government needs to show that there are some, that you first need to find out proper ways of tackling it, and that there should be ways of finding a sustainable way of using it. But one thing that also came out is that there is just not a proper local management thereof, but that is also kind of linked to our improper waste management as a whole. So that was it in a nutshell.
Very cool. I think that's, wow, that's like more people than I thought anybody would go and interview. Of course, you did it online, but
yeah, that helps.
That does help, but it also gives you less, when you have conversations with people, other things come up. But I think it's still really cool that you guys did it online and got so many responses.
Yeah, we try to get more responses to give a more of a proper indication. Otherwise, if you have 6 people and 2 people say something, it varies so quickly.
Exactly. And I know we have other people. No, go ahead, Fleur.
No, that's it.
No, I was going to say something that is interesting how the local people exactly knows where to tackle, like prevent from reaching beaches. The 6 people, so they know things. Proper and timely beach cleanups are like things that you should know, but we don't know why does the government acts quickly. People even without having a special knowledge of sargassum know what to do. This is the example.
Yeah.
We do try to spread knowledge as the NGOs, and I see that also more information is shared also online between individuals, and I see it more on the tourism fora as well. But I mean, we also kind of know why government doesn't do it, because they have other priorities, and only if it really focuses on tourism beaches, or if the locals really complain, then they'll handle it. But it's because they don't have the resources really to do it, or don't want to spend the resources. Let me say it more properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's
Yes.
always a resource and money issue, and with it comes priority issues, since the higher something is prioritized, the more resources flow towards it.
Yeah.
And I think it's also hard to possibly budget for something that's so fluctuating. So I think because maybe in some cases it's not necessarily consistent enough, it's kind of dismissed.
Yes, I think so too, but after year and year coming in, some governments, like in Mexico, they have started to put more people and more money towards this, and other governments still aren't. Like, not that the Mexican government is doing a perfect job, it's definitely far from. It still has a lot there's still a lot of sargassum that needs to be picked up. But yeah, I think after a while of the sargassum coming in, you're going to have the same problem next year, and you need to start, getting funding from it, whether it's from the World Bank or internally distribute funding towards it.
We see a lot of the French islands actually doing a lot more of a proactive approach, where like Martinique and Guadeloupe and stuff, that they're doing a lot more with the booms, and so it is nice to see that they're doing more, and we can learn from them as well.
Yes.
Well, I do agree that with the fact that if you are not that much affected or irregularly affected, and with the fact that governments do not have such much resources, that's the main reason why they don't plan anything. Mexico, of course, is an exception in the sense there's a bigger country, but I'm 100% sure that if you're going to look there in certain areas, that you also find that certain areas are absolutely not taken care of and others they are. So there you have exactly the same issue as you would have on an island, where there are not enough resources, and they don't just take care of it whenever it happens, and then they will see for the next time.
Yes, and the other issue that we had in Mexico for a long time is that it was unclear which government department is in charge of this. And it was handed from one department to the next in a circle until it ended up again in the same hands, and just going round and round, because it affects so many different areas. Like, is it the Navy who has to clean this up, or the nature parks, or is it the tourist board, or like, there's so many different actors and government agencies that are affected and that could potentially be the ones taking care of this. So I think it also, there in a lot of places, it takes several years to even figure out who is tasked with doing something against this, because of course nobody wants to have this extra task and their resources being pulled towards this.
That's absolutely true. That's happening over here too.
Do we have more input on St. Maarten? Because I know we have more people than just the Nature Foundation who are from St. Maarten.
Well, Fleur that was just presenting was from EPIC, Environmental Protection in the Caribbean. So we like combined. Mm-hmm. And then I think if our French side rep is here, maybe he has something.
I think not. Okay, then let's move on to, where is this?
That's me, Carlo B.
That's what I thought, Jeffrey.
How you doing, everyone? Good evening or good afternoon. So, as you can see in the picture, I actually put 2 slides. I didn't have much to do. So you can go back to the first one. Yeah, stay right there. No, second one. Sorry. Yeah, perfect. I don't know if you noticed right to the back, that's actually a power plant. That's actually Anguilla. That's actually our power plant that provides our electricity on the island. And that's actually Curaçao Bay. I think one of our veterans from Anguilla did post this to I think Mr. Hodge, if I'm not mistaken. But this was actually posted 2 days ago. I actually walked the beach with me and my other friends. They normally do some fishing on the side of the rocks. So we decided to go for a little stroll, and we decided we saw this, and I saw it, and I had to take a picture of it. So I don't know if you noticed, like on the back end screen, a lot of plastic is there, and then to the front, a lot of decomposed. Right, the regular back there, a lot of plastic, and then decomposed sargassum, and then fresh sargassum right to the front. So, but the decomposed sargassum is normally sand. You normally have sand there. And as you can see, no sand is there now. I normally live not too far away from there. So I live actually in a little harbor. And when this, like last night, I will be honest to you, I really couldn't sleep last night because the smell was so terrible. Because it's just gathering and gathering, and it's just so terrible. If you go to the next slide, you can see that's a sargassum on the outside Scots, right? So that's a sargassum that has not even reached the shore as yet. So you can see how much of it is on the outside Scot, right? So many of it is not even inside there yet. This is just sargassum out there wandering, still waiting to get to shore. And you can imagine how much of it is gonna keep coming there. Something I noticed that sea turtles, they normally produce eggs on the sand. And I think there's something that's gonna start to kill that. So I'm seeing from my end. And I spoke to some fishermen. They also said that some said is great because it's getting fish around, but some also said it smells bad. I haven't heard anyone as yet from my area saying that it's decomposing anything like electronics or anything. But I could say that the smell is very terrible. It's unbearable. It's very hard to cope with. I could tell you're sleeping at 12 in the night, 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's terrible because like when the wind shifts, it's just a very, very high smell. And it's decomposing, it's not being removed. So it's just there. And it's just gathering. And as you can see how much of it is on the outskirts that has not come to shore as yet. So this is something that I'm saying to myself that I think is something that it just happened on one side of the island so far, but I can imagine when the winds keep changing, how can it impact the whole island and how tourism is going to start to affect tourism. So I think this is something that we all need to start to actually get government impacted to this. Not even government, I think everyone. I think it's just a whole team job because it's something that I think is very hard to manage. So it's just not something one person needs to do. I think it's just going to be a team effort to manage this sargassum. But that's my presentation.
Yes. And if it affects people, like if the smell in your houses is so bad that you can't sleep and you get headaches, then that's definitely not like a safe place to live anymore. And the government would have to actually do something about it because yeah, like hydrogen sulfide, if the levels are high, it can be really bad for people's health. So it's not something to take lightly. And Jeffrey, I would really like if you guys are experiencing that you cannot sleep and it smells so bad, I would call the local government. I know they're probably not going to do anything, but we did hear from a lot of people last week and also this week that the only time the government does something is if enough people complain that it's bad. So maybe you have to go and complain and tell them that you cannot sleep at night. Just to help with your health as well. Yeah, Jessica.
Can I make an inquiry? Is there a way for a commoner to figure out how potent, I don't even know how to ask this, and toxic the air is in those areas? Because I live in Little Harbor too, and it's a bit poignant, like I can smell it, but it's here, as much as, yes, you can still sort of get whiffs of it depending on how the wind is blowing, etc. It's nothing like the forest, which I think Jeffrey also has taken photos and been over there as well, which is right next, it's the bay right next door sort of to where we both live. And if you go over there, it's just so concentrated and so strong there. But I don't even know, how would you even record or measure, I guess is the term I'm looking for, the toxicity, or how, so you know what the numbers are as
I know
to
what you mean.
What is not safe.
There are there's a company called Martini Air, which is from Martinique, which has several sensors. So there's sensors that you put out, and then after a week you take away how much it accumulated over the week, and then there's other sensors that work in real time and tell you how much hydrogen sulfide there is and other toxic gases. So on the French islands, they have these sensors in specific areas to alert the government when things are not safe. Then here in Mexico, I know a company, I'm good friends with people working there, and they have like little sensors that they can clip on their belts when they're working at the beach or in the company itself at Carbon Wave, so that they get an alert. I can ask about those sensors and how much they cost, especially the clip belt ones. And maybe that's something that people could have in their houses, or that, you could have like maybe one for your area, and then you could go and check it for people and show the government that it's not safe, right?
Exactly. I'd be interested in maybe getting some more information on that if you come across, or if anyone else has anything like that, because I don't know if or what has been used here, but even for my own interest, and even while we're researching through this process, it'd be interesting to see the levels of toxicity between the different locations, like right by the school up Island Harbor, where a lot of sargassum does accumulate. And I know children have been sent home from school, but at what point, how long were they exposed, and at what levels, et cetera, et cetera? I don't know how and if that's been monitored.
Yeah, that is a good question. I'll look into it and I'll send you guys information about it, because I think that is definitely a thing that should be monitored way more widely than it is monitored right now. Especially hearing from a lot of you guys how people have similar impacts with schools and being impacted by the smell, and people in their houses, as in like the French islands and in St. Lucia.
Thank you.
We had those two, and then we're moving to Montserrat. Who's presenting on Montserrat?
Hello, good night.
Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, thanks. So with Montserrat, as you said, the area that's affected is not an area where many persons live, but this is the area that is very close to the harbor. They've been getting a few influx at that area, that's Little Bay. You realize along the beach shore, right on the photo to your right, this is a drain that goes straight from the water quality area, and this goes straight into the ocean. Interviewing persons, the information that everyone was repeating is just the odor. Some of them indicated they had lack of information in terms of what it's used for, how they can be affected. Some persons were very knowledgeable in terms of reading about the bricks that's been done in either Mexico. With that area in particular, The fishermen indicated that most of it gets to shore. The only time they're really affected is when it's underwater. So sometimes they get stuck into the boat propeller. But they said when it gets on the shore, it's not a large quantity, and about in less than a day or two, it's usually covered by the sand. So the smell would not last, and whenever it's dry, you don't get the odor. My next slide. So this area is the area that is affected the most. That's what I had last week, which is Margarita Bay. It's not a beach or area where persons go to use, but there is a community called Little Bay that lives just adjacent to that area. So persons that lives very close to the beach say that they are affected by the scent. They said they don't know themselves going to the ocean or to like in that area because the sea is very rough there. But there are two fishermen known to be going and do some line fishing in that area. So they told me, I got their information and spoke to them. They said one of the things they have noticed that fish get stuck in the sargassum, especially the small ones, and turtles. And they said it has become very difficult for them to do any fishing in that area. No one reported in terms of like health issues or rust, like the report that was done with the one from St. Lucia in Kuala, where persons reported being sick, having headaches and nausea and stuff like that. I have worked directly with that community, and they are very much impacted in terms of their livelihood. They're very big on sea moss farming, and a lot of the time when the large influx of sargassum gets to that area, they're not just affected with the smell, but even their livelihood is being affected. So yeah, in that area in Montserrat, that's the only place that's really affected. Going on that line lower down is where the area where persons are not, it's the enclosure. So this is a restricted area. So that's where the old airport used to be. But where persons usually fish and recreate, it has not been as the influx or the quantity is not very high. This is my information gathered from ISUV.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's really interesting, especially that the sea moss farmers are impacted, which is something we don't have much information about, I think. And it's like a kind of a new group of people that are impacted by sargassum.
Yeah, well, that is in St. Lucia. That's in because of the that I watch. Yeah.
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 And then we got Providencialis. Is that Arentia?
Yeah. I didn't put my name on it. Sorry.
That's okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, the first slide that we are looking at is actually sunrise on the north side of Providencialis. Last week, I presented from the eastern side, Long Bay. Now I am on what we call Grace Bay Beach, which is one of our most popular strips in Providencialis. And what you guys see here, and the sargassum never looks like this on this side. So I'm glad that I'm in this course doing this during this time, because I've never seen Grace Bay look like this. So here, a friend of mine, Lynn, and her running partner, Julian, they run in the morning, and they typically run along Grace Bay. And from talking to her, she was saying how the sargassum makes their run along the shoreline so much difficult. As you guys can see, the photos, literally it's to the left and to the right of them. So what you're seeing is how far down it goes. And this is the wee hours of the morning. Lynn is what she calls herself. She's a vegan runner. So she's very susceptible to scents and different smells, and and she says that the smell does make it. I don't know if you guys can see it on my slide, but it says that she said that the smell does make it a little bit more difficult. When they are going, she says sometimes they run up to 9 kilometers a day, and it's just a morning run before it gets too hot. So that was a big eye opener for me, because last week I did say, okay, I want to go to the beach in the morning to see how the sargassum looks, because last week it was all dead. As you can see in this, that's a lot of freshly colored sargassum. If we go to the next slide, Fran, what we are looking at is the exact same beach. I thought it would be best to show it from this, because again, I've never seen Grace Bay like that. So one slide is from sunrise when I went out there and I met Lynn. This slide is about around 8 a.m., 8:15-ish. And this is how they remove the sargassum. And this is right in front of a prominent resort. So how deep do you dig?
Maybe almost 3 feet. Really? And then large 4 feet.
And pack it down?
Yeah, pack everything down inside.
Every day?
Not really every day. I think we start, Friday.
It's better. Okay, Fran, now we can go back to my slides. I'll stop sharing. Yes. And then I can explain more. How do
you guys see my slide?
Perfect. Okay. I can see your slides. So what the gentleman we saw on the beach was Mr. Jean Montu. He was also out there with 3 other workers as well. And I wanted to take a picture from the flip side so you guys can see the stairs that lead down. This resort is called Coral Gardens. It is in front of one of our most popular reefs on the island. It's called, the reef itself is called Coral Garden. It is one of the most popular snorkeling reefs. So this place gets a lot of traffic, and this beach is normally always empty, beautiful. But in addition to there being a restaurant where you see the stairs, there are also resorts. So what the resorts does is they have their workers come out between 7:30, 8 a.m. to 9. And these guys dig holes all day. And these are not young men. These men are well in their 50s, because it was a couple of them out there. And as you can hear from when I asked him, he says they dig them about 3 feet deep, 4 feet wide. You can also see in the photo on the left how wide that hole is. And they pack the sargassum down because they don't have the capacity and or maybe funding to have tractors come on the beach to upload that. So they're kind of doing the same thing that Charmaine is doing at Kimchaw, packing it down and putting the sand on top of it. Now, if you go to the next slide, Fran.
And this is interesting because a lot of places, they just put it in a corner. They don't even take the time to make holes and pack it down.
But these guys, they have to, by like 9:30, the beach is clean and the beach chairs are set up. So now this is the same beach. This is in front of Coral Gardens as well. I returned at sunset to see the difference and see how, I had a whole workday go by, and at the end of the day I went back to see the difference of the sargassum. Now, if you could tell, the tide did come in higher, but the water started to pull that sand off. So there are puddles of sargassum as you're walking through. There's another video, but this is just showing the sargassum on the beach. Excuse me. Yes, Rose. I think that's what it was, that the tractors are prohibited because, like we know, there it is. You're a DCER, so you know the insides. But Rose she's adding into the chat, which is absolutely true. That again, bringing tractors, and I think we said this on the first week, was bringing tractors on the beach really, not only does it like kill a lot of things that are around, but it's just not a nice sight. And for this to be Grace Bay, oh, I wish the video would show, but I didn't get the people in it. But even though the beach is covered with all of this sargassum, there was still people standing out here taking photos of the sunset. So the sargassum, it does, at least for us here in TCI, it does make people frown their face, but the beauty of it does not push them away from the shore. So just from speaking with the gentleman at the resort, and I talked to a few people on the beach, but they were tourists and they didn't want to share their names or be photographed. And the last slide is kind of the funniest thing to me. And Rose, you probably known about this that happened yesterday. This is why I had to throw this one in. There was a truck that flipped over on the road. And as you pass by, guys, these are bags of sargassum. So it is getting packed up somewhere and it is getting sent to the trash. But it was just a crazy coincidence that the truck that flipped over, and I saw this. These were photos that I took off of my phone as I'm passing it, in typical island fashion, as I put in my caption. But we do see that, okay, the sargassum is getting packed up, because you still have resorts like Waimara, Windsong, all of the big names, the Palms, they all share that northern coastline. So they all had this sargassum problem. But for me, Coral Gardens was easy to get to, and it was somewhere that I can go consistently. I didn't speak with many fishermen, just because I was on more of the tourist side of the island, again, and noticing the sargassum there. But I want to know where they send it. We do have like a big dump all the way like en route to Northwest Point, but truth be told, you're absolutely right. I don't know where they send it. And the police were there, so I couldn't even like roll the window down and ask questions because I wanted to. I really wanted to ask questions like, where did this come from? Where is it going? So what I got from speaking to the workers and then like the tourists on the beach and Lynn is, and this goes hand in hand with all of the videos that we watched from this week, is a management plan, a sargassum management plan. Even the workers on the beach said, we could catch it before it hits the shore because, we have that barrier reef right there, and it's management plan, infrastructure. I'm not going to say funding because if we have funds to do everything else on this island, I'm pretty sure, environmental or even in collaboration with government can bring about that part. Based off of all of my other colleagues in the chat, I was really bummed that I didn't do a graph, but I didn't questionnaire 27 people. Man, I felt so underdone when I saw those 27 people. I was just like, oh, how did I talk to 27 people?
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple people, right? But yeah, I think it's totally fine how you did your homework. So it's fine for the people who did questionnaires and who went out and did it online and who really took data and made graphs. But hearing the stories, I think, is as valuable and as interesting as it is to see data in graphs and see like how many people said this. So I think both ways of doing the homework are excellent.
Cool. And yeah, guys, that was it. But you can even see environmentally wise, like what it's doing to the environment. Like we're all, truth be told, as I listen to everyone else go through their slides, we are a little bit more privileged here in TCI because the sargassum it's not as strong, at least in a lot of our populated beaches or close to schools. As a former school teacher, I couldn't imagine working at a school where the smell and it's ruining our electronics. So like you guys in Anguilla and St. Maarten, like my heart goes out to you because it's wild. But that's all from Bravo.
All right. So next we got Curaçao, Maarten and Manfred.
Yes, good evening. So what we started with on Curaçao, with a little summary, and I'll give you some backgrounds about it. Very interesting fact is that if you talk to people, they hardly remember any of the Sargassum problems. So they have a very short memory about it. And if they remember anything, then it's most of the time it's about the smells and the news about the fact that there were some turtle rescues going on, etc. There's also no reported economical damage. So that's also, of course, one of the reasons why people do not remember it so much, because there was not much affected impact. And that's because we are very lucky with the influx so far, I think. Regarding the real big influx that we saw on the video last time that Manfred has shared, that was in 2019, and the Sea Turtle Preservation Foundation then saved 50 turtles. They ringed them all. Afterwards, still 13 died, but so 37 of them were saved and went on. And we also spoke to a doctor in the area, and he reported no health problems according to the people that he has in his area that he's taking care of. So in a summary, you can see that Curaçao is not heavily affected. Now, if you go to the next slide, you can also see the reason why, because this is Curaçao, and the upper side, the right side, that's the north side, and that's where the Sargassum is coming. And on the downside, you have all the tourist areas. So mainly from Sint Michiel-Willemstad down to Newport. That is the area where a lot of tourists are going, where hotels are. And there is not much of Sargassum coming there, or hardly any. You have a little bit on the left of Willemstad, where it's coming to the mangrove areas. But people are not, the populated areas are more on the left side. So the people are not much affected. And that's also why they're not really remembering it. The two areas that we had is one number is the Ascension Bay. That's what we showed last week. There were also the turtle problems. And on the second one, it was on St. George's Bay, and there's an area kite surfers. So they were affected, of course, by the way in 2019 mainly. You can do the next one. So when we spoke with the coordinator of the sea turtle conservation of the Curaçao, he said, well, there is, exactly as we just said, there is almost or not impact on tourism, no fishery, because also they are on the south side, on the left side of the island. Water supplies on the left side. So there is no real impact on all of those areas. On the impact, it was especially on the wildlife, and that's with the turtles, because that is the area where also are the parks and where are the preservation is done. So the areas that we had the Sargassum, it is not brought to any landfill, so they just move it aside, they leave it there, and then it composted, and then nobody else is looking at it anymore. So that's what he told us. If you do the next. If you talk to the doctor who is living on that area where we had the first arrow on Ascension, his remarks were exactly the same. Tourism, he has nobody coming into his, how do you call it, doctor's advices. Nobody had any problems, the locals not. No electronic devices, nobody talked about that. He did have some remarks about the stench. It was even in that year, when it was 10 kilometers away with the wind flowing it in, they had problems. But then again, it's only a few families who are living there, so they don't have that much problems either with it. Should do the next. This is for everybody to practice their Dutch a little bit, so that's why we put it there, and I hope you all will read it, of course, completely. But this is saying the Sargassum as a resource. And we had, as Manfred just said before, earlier, this was 3 two-page articles in the local newspaper, which is quite well read by the Dutch population, mainly. Everybody, just to understand, the people on Curaçao, they do speak mostly Old Dutch and Spanish, but the main language is Papiamento. And they're more comfortable, of course, in Papiamento. So reading a Dutch newspaper is not their main priority. So this is a different part of the island population that is reading the Dutch. And this, if you would read this is very, very extensive. It's covering all the topics about Sargassum, where it's coming from, what it is doing for you, the pictures with it. So if you would have read this was in 2022, you would have had a very good knowledge and background knowledge about what sargassum is and what it's doing. So still that people do not know 1 year later so much about it tells you that they are not affected and that they're not interested so much about it. You do it next. Yeah, okay, this is also a video. This is a video of 10 minutes, so you don't have to see it fully, but this is exactly what, this is how it looked like on the number 1 area. The interesting thing about the video, and that's why we wanted to show it to you, is that this was fully done in Papiamento. So this was a local person, and he told this story in Papiamento, and you could find. So if you want, that's what we wanted to share with you guys, is that in Curaçao, and like what everybody's saying, there is not much available information. There is. You have to look up it a little bit, but even in the local language, you can find background information about the sargassum. I'm quite sure that the next time when we have a big impact, when we are hit again, then people will start to remember, and then probably they will start looking at it. But by now, we are quite lucky, as we say. There's no much effect of sargassum, so people do not bother too much, and we do not have any plans made by the governments to set up procedures, etc., etc. They will deal with it as soon as it hits, and the areas that complain most, they will be helped as usual.
Yeah, I guess it's luck and not luck, because if things go out of people's mind fast, it also means that next time the sargassum comes, you may not be prepared better than last time because you don't take time to prepare. At least that's what.
Yeah, we will definitely not be prepared because there is no preparation, and it will be on an ad hoc base again. So people say, "Oh, gee, there is sargassum." So the moment that people start to complain enough, then they really think we have to do something about it, if they do something about it, or just let it go. That is how it's done more often over here, like on many islands, by the way.
Yes, and I mean, that's even how, like, in the Dominican Republic, in Punta Cana, which is now very well, like, it's like a hotel area that were like the first ones to put booms and stuff, but the first few years when sargassum sometimes would hit, sometimes it doesn't, you know, they would forget about it, and the next year it doesn't come. So it took them a few years of getting hit until they realized we have to start preparing for next year's sargassum problem.
Correctly. And for sure, when we will hit the other side of the island, but it is unlikely because of current, because on the upper side, that's Bonaire above us, and then behind us is Aruba. So that's why Aruba even gets less than we, although there's quite a lot of sea in it, so it can still float, of course. But yeah, the tourist side of the island is not that much affected. So that's also probably the reason why there's not much done yet. The moment that will happen, people will start up, and then there will be plans, and then they will protect their incomes.
Yeah, I think the sargassum very much mirrors what happens in our society at large. Like if the big industries or big economic incomes are affected, like the tourism in the Caribbean, then something is done straight away. If it's just people's health or just the environment and animals, then often not much is done because no income is lost per se. And I find that very, very sad that unfortunately this is how our societies work.
Yeah, Francisca, that's very true. Great job, Maarten, for telling the story. When I have the chance, I will talk to the policymakers of the local government to ask if they are prepared when a new sargassum flux is coming, and if they are monitoring this. And this could be very easily resolved because we have only 2 major sites with very narrow entrances. So putting a boom there and then collecting the sargassum outside, that might be a possibility to look into. But I'm absolutely not sure that if a new influx is coming, that they are ready for that. So that's a good feedback. I've also got some update information from Aruba, because I saw in the slides and you were telling that if the refinery was still operational, it might have been affected. I think you should be a little bit careful with that kind of predictions or information, because the refinery in Aruba was closed before we had the Sargassum problem, and it's probably situated on the place on the island where the impact is quite limited. So that should not be like something that you should worry about, and that's maybe something you should share also with the public. Also, I saw in the Aruba feedback that people think that there would be an effect on the water influx. I'm in direct contact with the operational risk manager of Web Aruba, and they have never encountered any problems there. So that's also something they should, let's say, inform the public that might not be a problem, and in case it should be a problem, they have precautions for that as well.
Very good information, Manfred. That's really good to know. And actually about Curaçao, so we did an interview with Luisa Flechas, who did a study on what to do with the sargassum in Curaçao. She's a researcher from the Netherlands. So they actually, the Curaçao government did give them the opdracht, or the, how do you say, not in Dutch, but like the appointment to look into what can be made with sargassum and how can it be managed. So they're working on something, but she also said that at the moment they had delays because of funding, and they're having a hard time finding the funding for the things that they have come up with.
Yeah. But this is something that Francisca, we should look into a little bit more. And like the Netherlands, Dutch, with their history on waterworks, and also Wageningen University on agricultural, if we put that together with our local knowledge, then it might be very well that we can solve something of the Caribbean sargassum problems.
Yes, and they were talking to like big company like Van Oort and Damon, which are big Dutch companies that have like big ships and big industrial types of like logistics stuff, and have figured out, I know Damon, I've met them in 2019 at a conference, they have figured out like a kind of a sucking device to suck sargassum from the shore. Like even those mats that we saw earlier, I think Jeffrey showed them, which are out in the open, not yet on the beach, could be sucked up by that. I don't know how many animals would be sucked up by it, but let's hope none, or let's hope they figure out how to. But yeah, there is definitely some big Dutch companies that have shown interest in also being part of the solution.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Perhaps a remark to that is you have to be careful again, like Manfred is also saying all the time. The Dutch, also Wageningen, and also those companies are very much interested, but as long as they can make some commercial value out of it,
yes,
meaning they paid. And the Dutch government indeed subsidize a lot of these things to find out possible solutions, and looks if then afterwards there is some money to be made. Most often when that is not directly the case, all the resources is just left as it were. And because the local governments, you have to understand that the Caribbean, the Dutch Caribbean, you have 3 islands which are Bonaire, Saba, and Sint Eustatius. They are funded by the Dutch government, but the other 3 are not, and they have to pay for this themselves, and then that remains most of the time stopped, unfortunately. So
yes. So yeah, that interview we haven't released it yet, but I think it will be released within like the next month. So look out for it, because there is some information of what's happening in Curaçao as well. And then we had that video. And then I also want to read what Jerome wrote. So she recalls that back in 2016, there was a large sargassum landing on the Palm Beach area due to the hurricane season. And this area was both cleaned by the hotel, so there's the Marriott and the Holiday Inn, but it was partially cleared by tides and waves and the flooding as well. And at some point, huge chunks of sand was also swept away. and sand suppletion occurred a bit later. This area was closed down for a while, or at least barricaded, so entry was limited to the adjacent beaches. So yeah, especially when you have hurricanes or storms, sargassum that is on the beach can be taken away. I've seen that in South Caicos as well. There was a beach which had, I called them like boulders of sargassum. If you look at the pictures I shared with the worms, there is one picture of it where really you have pieces of sargassum that are kind of like a big rock that is just really squashed down. And they were there for months. Like we would go to the beach every 1 or 2 months, and I would always see it. And then there was some rainy time where we couldn't drive there because the area was too wet, the dirt roads. And then after that rain and the rainy season, when we had a few big downpours and a bit of storms, those big rocks were gone. So they got swept away by the current. So that definitely does happen. So before we do, we have Saba as well. I think the homework kind of moved again in the middle. So we go back to the homework. So who wants to talk about Saba?
Hi there, good evening, everyone. So I'll be telling you quickly about Saba. So Saba, as you may know, with just one volcano, so there's actually very little of a coastline that we use. The two main areas would be the Cove Bay, which were the picture we showed last week with a little enclosed swimming area, and then the harbor that you have picture of right here. I'll just go over what the people said. It's in text in the next few slides. So you can see on the right-hand side of the harbor that we have a bit of like sargassum buildup. And so basically sargassum on Saba hasn't been ever a major problem from what we've heard from people. In the harbor, it sometimes has piled up everywhere. And they just basically, the government send out a digger that fishes out the sargassum, scooping it out. And then they move it away toward the gut that's kind of like serving as like a landfill. On Cove Bay, however, because it's used for recreation, they usually remove it manually because no machinery can access there. And from there, it's put in a truck and taken away. So from the harbor master and from talking with a couple people that work on boats, there's never been so much to the point that the propeller would be blocked. So the impact on Saba would be pretty limited overall. But that's because we only use a very small part of our shoreline, and it only blows into the harbor. You need to have the right wind, the right sargassum mat, and the right waves, which is quite rare overall. So impact relatively limited in comparison to all the other islands, I would say.
Yes, also because you don't have many beaches, so
yeah, we don't even really have them like by 10th Reef, but there's been like rocks falling off, so it's not really accessible anymore. You have to like climb over rocks. So yeah, very, very limited, impact. And that's pretty much for Saba.
Yeah, for third page.
Local divers. Yes, so at some dive site, which would be mainly or cove area, or like where the water comes inland a little bit, the sargassum do pile up, but that would be like the only time that it's impacting like the tourism industry in a way. And then from local residents, knowledge is quite limited. Educating about like the potential danger of like arsenic and things like that could be useful, but once again, to get it's sometimes a bit hard because access to the shoreline is hard. So education about it would be good, and that would help like the general public to know more about it.
Cool. And then we have more stuff from Aruba.
Well, it says that input from 2 local citizens working at the Department of Environment. The impact is minimal as most of the time the influx is at the north coast. It can have an effect on fishermen from the rocks, recreational and divers. If the sea current changes, then it might be consequences at the southwest coast, where the beaches are. There is an operational procedure to clean up in order to make sure the beaches are available that same day for tourists. This is why it doesn't get attention from the media. Oh. It is also used for making soap. Wow, like here, by, for example, Eco Living Aruba. There was also a capacity building in the past about making products out of sargassum. Threats to local wildlife, health impacts of toxic gases, loss of sand and beaches, lack on information on sargassum product development, poor prediction of influx, disinterest in the local media, optics marine. Oh, that's a web page. Was being used in the past to monitor sargassum. So well, it's a complete like note of the Department of Environment.
Yes, and I think it shows what we've already heard about Aruba, that it doesn't affect that much the tourism industry, and it's also not as affected as other islands. But there's still people making stuff out of sargassum, which is quite interesting.
Yes, that's interesting. And the capacity building. I haven't heard in the other islands a capacity building for sargassum.
Well, there was, I think, in 2019 or 18, and UNEP, so UN Environmental Protection Agency, I think it stands for UNEP, a conference in Aruba on sargassum. So maybe that's why they have a lot of, they had capacity building there. But I don't know if that was part of it. And then we got Grand Cayman. Sorry.
Hello.
Hi, Oscar. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Hello.
Okay, yeah. So with Grand Cayman, we have one major beach, which is 7 Mile Beach. That's basically where the vast majority of our hotels are. And so, yeah, that beach doesn't have that much sargassum on it right now. And because of that, like nobody really cares about sargassum right now. Yeah, like we have had like big sargassum influxes in the past, but yeah, recently not really. Yeah, so most people I spoke to, they didn't know what it was. And then people that worked in the water sports industry, they had been affected in the past where it would clog up the jet skis jets and it'd just be unappealing to tourists. But yeah, again, like recently, not really. And then with divers, yeah, it's just when you're on the surface, you occasionally get hit by sargassum, or you'd have to swim around the sargassum, or when you're going out on a boat, you'd have to drive around the sargassum. I went snorkeling the other day and I got sargassum just went on top of me, and I didn't realize it happened. It was pretty terrifying. Thought some creature was attacking me. But yes, next slide, please.
Sorry. Oh, that went too many slides. There we go.
Okay, and then this is South Sound Beach. So this beach is relatively unpopulated compared to 7 Mile. It's more of a residential area where like locals live, and yeah, locals live along the beach. So there was like I probably say a moderate amount of sargassum on the beach when I was there. Yeah, the main issues were just the like the smell, which so I spoke to a couple of people there that lived there, and the main thing that they were complaining about was the smell and how the sargassum like appeared to like, well, I guess they more associated it with plastic, and how because it would wash up with random plastic objects. And then also some people would talk about so I'm drawing a blank. Some people would talk about Oh yeah, just having to clean it off of their property themselves because there's no government infrastructure to handle anything like that. And yes, that is what the information that I gathered over the week. So thank you for listening.
Yes. And then we have some more pictures from Anguilla, from Sandy Hill.
Yes, that was me. That's the picture I took yesterday before I went down to the beach to speak with the swimmers and the hotel, well, and the homeowners I saw on the beach. So I spoke about it earlier in my presentation, and as I said earlier, Sargassum seems to be having an economic impact on the people who live in the area, and also with the smell that emits from it. And it's very difficult. I think right now we don't really pay it much attention, but I think that is something that we need to address and find solutions to it. Every island may have a different way of treating the problem, but it is going to be a big problem. Even as we discovered in our class that the sargassum is going to get bigger and bigger as the years go by. So we need to have a plan as to how we're going to deal with this, because soon enough, the hotels are going to be affected large scale, especially islands like ours that depend solely on tourism is going to be a major factor. And I remember in the first class that we had, I was telling you guys about this particular resort that actually had to compensate the guests because of the sargassum that was right on their beach. And they also had to find other villas and other resorts to put their guests in, because that particular resort was right on the beach and they had a very bad influx of sargassum, and that affected their business tremendously. So this is something that we have to look at and try to get the solutions to it quickly before it becomes a real problem.
I agree 100%. Okay, so Evelyn.
Yes.
Quiz questions.
Well, today I am going to ask the help of the participants to answer the questions. So, who wants to answer the first question? You can read the answer or you can tell us what you answer. Anyone?
Okay, good evening. This is Arona from the British Virgin Islands. I will read what is there.
Thank you.
What I learned, you're welcome. Which is the general that should be which or what?
Which, I think.
Which?
Okay. Which is the general perception of the fishermen in St. Lucia about sargassum?
Yeah,
the response is good thing outside at fishing site, bad things when approaching to the shore. What is the community of Praslin in St. Lucia expecting to achieve regarding sargassum? Better sargassum management. Those are the responses that were provided.
Yes, and then we have a second slide.
Yes.
This is longer. Oh my God. I now know why Evelyn didn't want to read the answer.
What formed the Great Sargassum Belt?
Yes.
In 2009 to 2010, extreme wind and surface currents, North Atlantic Oscillation, which is abbreviated NAO, advec transport, sargassum from Sasco, sea to the eastern Atlantic coast of Spain. Then in spring 2010, sargasso appears in the offshore of Gibraltar. NAO conditions return. Spring 2010 to 2011, sargassum is affected advected southwest in the North Equatorial Current, abbreviation NEC, and southward in the Canary Current, where it spreads in the Caribbean and tropical Atlantic by North Equatorial Countercurrent, NECC, forming the Sargassum Belt from West Africa to America. And from 2011 to the present, Sargassum flourishes equatorial Atlantic with convenient conditions as light temperature, nutrient supplies. From this new flourish, Sargasso is advect to the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico.
Thank you, Arona.
Thank you, Arona.
You're welcome.
Does anybody have questions about the quiz of this week? Or anything to add?
Sorry to interrupt, Fran. Arinthia here. I had a question just because I didn't really understand the way the question was worded about the fishermen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Go ahead, Evelyn.
Oh no. Well, the video was almost about the fisherman talking about the problem in St. Lucia. So I just was wondering if you could see, as I saw the way they see the problem, or the good thing of sargassum, that there is a good thing about sargassum coming to St. Lucia, because they can have different kinds of fish outside the coastline, but when it approached to the coastline, they feel that it's a problem because they cannot even go to swim or do recreational things.
Okay, yes, okay, I did get that. I got that as well, and that's kind of what I answered was, how hard the sargassum makes their industry. The question just had me a bit perplexed when it said the general perception. I didn't know if it was, I just took it as their feeling. That's all. It was okay. I saw it. I was like, what does that mean? But answered it how I knew it. Which essentially you said the same with their protection, how their boats rusting. Before this course, I didn't know that sargassum messed up electronics.
Yeah,
those videos, eye openers. I had no clue about that.
And I mean, as other people said today, because living on the island, living close to the shore, you're already used to your electronics, corroding faster, so you may not even notice that it's happening. It took me a long while until I heard somebody say that, and I was like, wow, I wonder how many people actually realize that that's happening to their electronics through the smell of the sargassum.
Really, really cool. Not cool, but
so for next week's homework, you don't have to go outside this time. It's a bit of a looking up information, and we want to talk about different products. So I made a list here from all the products that are in the Sargassum Users Guide, and it's a really cool guide written in 2019, I think it came out, or 2020, that talks about everything that is known so far about different products. So that's where you're going to get started with your research if you're choosing one of these, but you can also choose something else. If you want to look at how to pick up oil with sargassum, this is the perfect week to do it. So you can also make a little experiment if you rather do experiments than doing research online and reading. But we have more than 20 different products, so it would be really cool if either by yourself or as a group of two, you're choosing a product and you are presenting next week on it. And I don't know if maybe now in class we can go through them and see who's interested in doing them. And if we have more than 2 people interested, you can decide if we want to do it together or if somebody wants to do another one. And that way we don't have everybody presenting on the same products, and we can learn about a lot of different products. And everybody can still research something they're actually personally very interested in. This course is made possible through funding by the Resilience, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESEMBID, financed under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESEMBID is being implemented by Expertise France, with the primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories. The course was designed by Franziska Elmer and Evelyn Salas, and the videos were produced by Marcel van de Kamp.